They say the Sovereign Zenith Academy only accepts the absolute cream of the crop, the untouchable elite, the top 1% of the top 1%. Honestly, I've seen smarter cabbages in the discount aisle at my local supermarket. The whole place is nothing but a glorified daycare for rich kids with overinflated egos, daddy issues, and enough hair gel to patch a hole in the ozone layer. I'm Ye Chen, by the way. If you look at the school's impeccably flawless digital registry, you'll find my name sitting comfortably at rank 999 out of 1,000 in the first-year cohort. Class F, the absolute bottom of the barrel, the trash tier. The place where they shove the kids who couldn't buy their way into Class A or didn't have the magical bloodline of some ancient, dusty ancestor who probably didn't even bathe. Everyone here thinks I'm a joke. A lazy, unmotivated loser who spends entirely too much time playing mobile games in the back row and sleeping through advanced combat tactics. And that is exactly the way I like it. You see, what these idiots don't understand is that Zenith Academy doesn't run on grades or honor or the power of friendship. It runs on merit points. Everything here, from a basic bottle of water to the right to expel another student, costs points. The school gives you a starting allowance and then leaves you to tear each other apart like rabid dogs in a meatpacking plant. It's a beautifully sick psychological experiment, disguised as high school. And while Class A is busy strutting around like peacocks, desperately trying to maintain their shiny academic records, I've been quietly operating a shadow syndicate out of the janitor's closet on the 3rd floor. Currently, I'm sitting in the Grand Pavilion cafeteria, trying to mind my own business and eat a bowl of terribly overpriced mapo tofu when the atmosphere suddenly turns colder than my ex-girlfriend's heart. The heavy mahogany double doors swing open, and in walks Long Ao Tian. Yes, that's his actual name. The guy literally has Proud Sky in his name. It's like his parents wanted him to get punched in the face. Long Ao Tian is the top student of Class A, the heir to the Long financial group, and a guy who desperately needs a reality check. He sweeps into the room wearing a custom-tailored uniform that probably costs more than my internal organs on the black market, flanked by his usual squad of brainless sycophants. Look at this pathetic sight. Long Ao Tian sneers, his voice carrying across the suddenly dead-silent cafeteria. He stops right next to my table.
He isn't looking at me, though.
He's looking at Su Yen, a girl from my class who accidentally dropped her tray near his ridiculously expensive Italian leather shoes. Class F trash spreading their filth in the elite dining hall. You should be eating scraps in the alley where you belong. I take a slow, deliberate bite of my tofu. It needs more garlic. Su Yen is shaking like a leaf, tears welling up in her eyes. I am sorry, young Master Long. I tripped. I'll clean it up immediately. Clean it up. Long Ao Tian laughs, a sharp, grating sound that makes me want to shove chopsticks through my eardrums. With what? Your dignity? That shoe is worth 100,000 merit points. You couldn't afford a single lace if you sold your entire family into servitude. Now, normally, the protagonist of a story would jump up here, scream something about justice, and challenge the arrogant jerk to a duel to the death. But I am not the protagonist. I'm just a guy who really hates having his lunch interrupted. Plus, stepping in directly is sloppy. It leaves fingerprints. Why use a sledgehammer when a scalpel, or better yet, a carefully placed banana peel of psychological manipulation, will do the trick? Hey, Long, I say, my voice flat, mouth still half full of rice. Could you move your colossal ego a little to the left? It's blocking the air conditioning, and you're making my tofu sad. The entire cafeteria gasps collectively. You could hear a pin drop. Someone in the back actually drops a spoon, and it sounds like a gunshot. Long Ao Tian slowly turns his head, his perfectly sculpted eyebrows twitching. He looks down at me like I'm a cockroach that just learned how to speak. Ye Chen, rank 999. I'm surprised you even know how to breathe without a manual. Are you actually trying to provoke me? Do you have a death wish? No, I have a digestion wish, and your cheap cologne is ruining the ambience, I reply, leaning back in my chair. Besides, aren't you supposed to be stressing over the upcoming midterm survival exam on the island? I heard the penalty for last place is expulsion. Would be a shame if the great Long Ao Tian tripped over his own wallet and got sent home to daddy. You dare. He steps toward me, his fist clenching, crackling with a faint blue aura of spiritual energy. The classic move. Flash a little power to intimidate the weak. It's so cliché, it physically hurts me to watch. But before he can throw a punch that I would have perfectly dodged while simultaneously stealing his wallet, his smartwatch chimes with a high-priority alert. It's the school's official broadcasting network. In fact, every single student's watch in the cafeteria starts ringing simultaneously. Long Ao Tian glances at his wrist, his sneer freezing, then slowly morphing into a look of absolute, unadulterated horror. The screen displays the latest update on the Underground Point Exchange, a black market system that the Student Council has been trying to shut down for months. Long Ao Tian had secretly invested over 2 million of his faction's merit points into a shell corporation within the network, thinking he was buying up all the exam cheat sheets for the upcoming survival test. He thought he was outsmarting the system. He thought he was playing 4D chess. The notification reads, "All assets belonging to account number 004 Long have been liquidated. Balance: 0 merit points. Reason: fraudulent activity detected and reported by anonymous user X." He's broke. In a school where points are literal oxygen, the untouchable king of class just got suffocated. What is this? Long Ao Tian stammers, his face draining of color until he looks like a startled ghost. Who did this? This is a glitch. The system is hacked. He starts frantically tapping his watch, his breathing turning ragged. The sycophants behind him are whispering nervously, stepping away from him like he suddenly caught a highly contagious disease of poverty. In this academy, the moment you lose your capital, you lose your power. The wolves turn on the alpha faster than you can blink. I scoop up the last spoonful of my mapo tofu, chewing thoughtfully as I watch him melt down. What he doesn't know, what absolutely nobody in this entire overpriced daycare knows, is that anonymous user X isn't just a hacker. It's the administrator of the entire underground market. I built the damn thing on my second day here because the Wi-Fi in the dorms was too slow. I let him invest his points. I watched him get greedy. I waited until the exact moment his ego was at its absolute peak, right before he tried to ruin some poor girl's day over a dirty shoe, to pull the rug completely out from under him. Tough break, Long, I say, standing up and grabbing my empty tray. I toss a single, crumpled 1-point chit onto the table.
Here.
Buy yourself a tissue. You look like you're about to cry. I don't wait for his reaction. I just walk away, slipping my hands into my pockets as his enraged screams echo off the vaulted ceilings behind me. The best part?
He still has no idea it was me.
He'll blame the student council. The student council will blame the disciplinary committee. Class A will descend into absolute civil war trying to find the traitor, tearing themselves apart from the inside right before the most important exam of the year. And Class F? We're going to sweep the island exam. Not because we're stronger or smarter, but because while they're playing by the rules of a rigged game, I already own the casino. I step out into the sunlit courtyard, stretching my arms. My smartwatch buzzes with a private notification. Transfer complete. 2 million merit points successfully routed through offshore proxy accounts. Current balance: 15,450,000 points. I smirk, pulling a lollipop out of my pocket and unwrapping it. They say this school is a ruthless meritocracy, where the strong eat the weak. They're wrong. It's a beautifully orchestrated puppet show. And honestly, pulling the strings is the only thing keeping me from dying of boredom. There's a specific sound a human body makes when it completely gives up on logic and surrenders to pure, unadulterated primal rage. It's a sort of high-pitched, gargling screech, like a tea kettle being strangled. That was the exact sound Zhao Ming made as he lunged at me. He didn't bother using the basic martial arts forms they drill into us during morning assemblies. He just threw himself forward like a rabid badger, his hands curled into muddy claws, aiming straight for my throat. Behind him, his 50 elite classmates were too paralyzed by their sudden, crushing financial debt to even move. I didn't flinch. I didn't drop my beef jerky. I merely took a casual half-step to the left. Zhao Ming flew past me, completely missing his target, and plowed face-first into the trunk of a massive, ancient banyan tree with a sickening thud. He bounced off the bark and crumpled into the mud, his wire-rimmed glasses finally snapping in half. Before he could even groan, a silver, spherical security drone descended from the canopy, its red optical sensor locking onto Zhao Ming's groggy form. "Warning," the drone's robotic voice chirped. "Student Zhao Ming, Class B. You have intentionally damaged a protected class, 3 flora specimen. Penalty, 500 merit points. Current balance, minus 45,500 points. Student is deemed a severe liability to Academy assets. Initiating mandatory timeout extraction." 2 mechanical claws extended from the drone, grabbed Zhao Ming by the collar of his ruined uniform and unceremoniously hauled him into the air. He dangled there like a wet sack of potatoes, screaming obscenities as the drone flew him away toward the island's holding facility. I took another bite of my jerky. "Well, that handles the trash collection. Anyone else want to try and bite my ankles, or are you guys good?" I looked at the rest of Class B. The burly, knuckle-cracking enforcers from 20 minutes ago now looked like a bunch of lost toddlers in a supermarket. Their leader was gone, their bank accounts were in the abyss, and they were staring at a guy from Class F who was casually drinking premium sparkling water in the middle of a deathmatch survival exam. "Drop your scanners, empty your pockets, and walk north," I said, pointing a thumb over my shoulder. "I hear there's a lovely patch of non-poisonous ferns about 3 miles up. Good for grazing." They didn't hesitate. 50 highly trained students dropped their gear in a messy pile and practically sprinted away into the underbrush, terrified that I was going to somehow charge them a breathing tax if they stayed on my lawn a second longer. "Boss," Fatty Wong whispered, waddling up to me with absolute reverence in his eyes. He was holding a half-eaten imported chocolate bar from the supply crate. "You didn't even touch him. You defeated the entire Class B Vanguard with math. You're a monster." "I'm an opportunist, Wong. There's a difference," I said, walking over to the pile of discarded Class B scanners and kicking them into a neat pile. "Gather these up. We're going to need the hardware for Phase 2. Su Yan peeked out from behind a bush, still clutching a digital map. "Phase 2? But Ye Chen, we already have enough food for a week. And you have millions of points. Can't we just hide here until the exam is over?" I sighed, looking up at the thick jungle canopy. Sunlight filtered through the leaves, casting long, deceptive shadows across the mud. "Su Yan, you don't survive Zenith Academy by winning one battle. You survive by making sure your enemies are too broke to afford a second one. Do you think the Student Council is just going to sit in their ivory tower while a Class F nobody bankrupts an entire upper-tier class?" Right on cue, the sky above Aegis Island flickered. The artificial weather projection system that covered the island disabled the sunlight, bathing the entire jungle in an ominous, blood-red glow. Every smartwatch in the jungle buzzed simultaneously. A heavy, localized holographic projection materialized in the center of our camp. It wasn't Headmaster Thorn this time. It was Shun Luo, the president of the Zenith Academy Student Council, a third-year prodigy who had never scored below a perfect 100 on any exam, physical or mental. He appeared as a towering blue hologram, wearing his pristine white council uniform with gold epaulets. His face was an emotionless mask of aristocratic perfection, his silver hair perfectly styled, his eyes cold and calculating. "Attention, first-year students," Shun Luo's voice echoed, smooth but laced with absolute authority. "It has come to the Council's attention that an anomaly has occurred within the point exchange ledger. An unauthorized entity has manipulated the zoning algorithms. The Academy prides itself on merit. Hiding behind computer code is not merit. It is cowardice." I rolled my eyes. Here we go. The classic brains are cheating, muscles are noble speech from a guy who literally has a private army doing his homework. "Therefore," Shun Luo continued, "I am invoking Emergency Protocol Sigma. All digital transactions are hereby frozen. The quadrant zoning rules are disabled. Furthermore, a bounty has been placed on the individual holding the highest accumulation of unauthorized points. The student who physically captures the anomaly and brings their smartwatch to the central ruins will be awarded 500,000 merit points and an immediate promotion to Class A. The hunt begins now. The hologram shattered into digital dust. Wang dropped his chocolate bar. It landed in the mud with a sad little splat. He froze the accounts. Wang panicked, his voice reaching a pitch only dogs could hear. He disabled the zones. We aren't protected anymore. Every single student on this island is going to be hunting us. Class A, Class C, the remnants of Class B. They're all going to want that bounty. Ye Chen, we have to run. Calm down, Wang. You're sweating through your jacket, I said, pulling my data pad out and plugging it back into my watch. Shen Luo thinks he just flipped the board. But I wanted him to freeze the transactions. Su Yan looked at me, completely bewildered. Why would you want that? You can't use your points anymore. Because, Su Yan, when you freeze the digital economy, people stop thinking like investors and start thinking like scavengers. Shen Luo just turned a tactical exam into a primitive witch hunt. I explained, my fingers flying across the holographic keyboard, injecting lines of pre-written malware into the pile of Class B scanners Wang had gathered. And more importantly, he just declared that whoever has the most unauthorized points is the target. Which is you, Wang cried out. Is it? I smirked. I hit the final execute command. A progress bar flashed on my screen, hitting 100%. You see, I began walking around the campfire. I knew the student council monitored the global ledger. They have predictive AI looking for massive point fluctuations. The moment I stole Class B's points, a red flag went up in Shen Luo's office. So, right before he initiated the freeze, I didn't keep the points in my ghost account. I picked up one of the hacked Class B scanners. I transferred the entire sum, all the stolen points, the zoning fines, everything, into a completely different account. I buried it under 3 layers of encrypted shell corporations, but I intentionally left a tiny, highly noticeable digital breadcrumb trailing back to the recipient. Su Yan gasped, her hands flying to her mouth. You framed someone. I didn't frame anyone. I corrected her gently. I gave a generous anonymous donation to a student in need. A student who recently lost all his money and is incredibly desperate to get his reputation back. Wang's jaw dropped. Long Ao Tian. Exactly, I smiled. Right now, Long Ao Tian's smartwatch is registering over 3 million unauthorized merit points. He has no idea where they came from, but the student council's tracking system does. And right now, every single bounty hunter on this island is getting a live GPS ping leading them directly to the king of Class A. In the distance, about 2 miles to the east, a massive explosion rocked the jungle canopy. Flocks of synthetic birds scattered into the red sky. The sounds of screaming, energy blasts, and clashing metal echoed through the trees. The civil war had begun. Class A was currently tearing itself apart as the lower classes swarmed their base camp, hunting for Long Ao Tian. While they are busy recreating the fall of Rome, I said, tossing a backpack to Wang, we are going to take a leisurely stroll to the central ruins. Wait, why the ruins? Su Yan asked, hurrying to pack up the Wagyu jerky. Shen Luo said the ruins are the drop-off point for the bounty. That's where the student council enforcers will be waiting. Exactly, I said, grabbing my own bag. Shen Luo sent his enforcers into the jungle to hunt the anomaly. That means the central command hub at the ruins is currently operating on a skeleton crew. They think they are the safest place on the island, which means the main server for the exam, the physical hardware they use to control the supply drops, is completely unguarded. I pulled my jacket collar up, looking toward the dark peaks of the island center. Shen Luo wanted a physical exam. So, we're going to walk right up to his front door, plug a flash drive into his central server, and drain the student council's private emergency fund. By tomorrow morning, the elite rulers of Zenith Academy won't be able to afford a cup of instant noodles. We hiked for 2 hours. The jungle was thick, but I had downloaded the optimal path routing from the logistics team's server hours ago. We avoided the mud pits, bypassed the territorial nests of the robotic direwolves, and stepped gracefully over the tripwires left behind by other classes. As we approached the central ruins, a massive, ancient stone temple outfitted with high-tech satellite dishes and neon barricades, the air grew cold. The student council had set up a perimeter of laser grids and automated turrets. "It's a fortress," Wang whispered, peering through a thick patch of ferns. We were lying on our stomachs at the edge of the tree-line. "We can't just walk in there." "We don't have to." A cold, sharp voice spoke from the shadows directly above us. Wang shrieked. Su Yan froze. I just slowly looked up. Sitting on the thick branch of an oak tree, perfectly balanced, was Lin Shui, the vice president of the student council. She was known as the Ice Queen of the second-year cohort. She had long, silver-blue hair tied in a strict ponytail, and she wore a sleek, black tactical variant of the council uniform. She held a suppressed energy rifle, the barrel pointed lazily at the center of my forehead. She dropped down from the branch, landing silently on the jungle floor without displacing a single leaf. "You're good, Ye Chen," Lin Shui said, her voice devoid of any emotion. Her icy blue eyes analyzed me like a lab specimen. "Your misdirection with long AOT was brilliant. You fooled the automated tracking system. You even fooled President Shinluo. The entire island is currently fighting over a decoy." "Thanks," I said, remaining on the ground, propping my chin on my hand. "I try to keep things entertaining." "How did you find me?" "I didn't track the points," Lin Shui said, taking a step closer, keeping the rifle perfectly steady. "I tracked the server pings. The firewall bypass you used on the supply crates left a microscopic degradation in the processing core. I simply followed the trail of decaying code. You're a genius hacker, rank 999. But you made one fatal miscalculation."
Oh.
"Do enlighten me," I said, secretly pressing a hidden button on my smartwatch with my other hand. "You assumed we rely entirely on technology," Lin Shui said, her lips curling into a faint, victorious smirk. "But my physical combat scores are the highest in the academy. I don't need a digital ledger to break your arms and drag you into the ruins myself. The game is over, Ye Chen. Surrender." "You know, Lin Shui," I sighed, slowly pushing myself up to a sitting position. "You council types are all the same. You think because you found a loophole in my plan you've won. You think you cornered me. I have a rifle pointed at your head." "I have cornered you," she stated coldly. "Did you ever stop to wonder?" I asked, my voice dropping to a dangerous, terrifyingly calm whisper. "Why a genius hacker would leave a trail of decaying code, leading directly to himself? Did you think I was just being sloppy?" Lin Shui's eyes narrowed. For the first time, a flicker of doubt crossed her perfect, icy features. "What are you talking about?" "I wanted you to find me." I smiled, my eyes glowing faintly in the dim jungle light. "I needed someone with high-level admin privileges to leave the safety of the perimeter. Your smartwatch has biometric clearance to the central ruins, doesn't it?" Before she could process the trap, the ground beneath her feet began to vibrate. Lin Shui looked down. "What?" "You tracked my code, Lin Shui. But you didn't check what the code was actually doing," I said. "I wasn't just hacking supply crates. I was systematically overriding the IFF, identify friend or foe, protocols on the island's wildlife defense system." From the shadows of the jungle behind us, dozens of pairs of glowing, blood-red eyes ignited. Low, mechanical growls echoed through the trees. The Academy's robotic direwolves, massive beasts made of titanium and carbon fiber, designed to keep students out of restricted areas, stepped into the moonlight. But they weren't looking at me. "I changed their targeting parameters," I explained casually, dusting off my jacket. "They no longer attack trespassers. They now exclusively target the biometric signature of student council members." Lin Shui's flawless composure finally broke. Pure panic flooded her eyes as she realized she was standing in the middle of a clearing, completely alone, surrounded by 30 highly lethal, hacked mechanical predators. The Alpha Wolf, a massive machine with razor-sharp steel jaws, let out a deafening metallic roar and lunged directly at the vice president. "Shall we proceed to the ruins, Wang?" I asked, stepping around the ensuing chaos without looking back. I believe the front door is wide open. There is a golden rule in the art of the con. If you want to pick a mark's pocket, you don't bump into them. You set their house on fire, wait for them to run out screaming, and then politely offer to hold their coat. As the sounds of tearing metal, superheated plasma fire, and Lin Shui's furious, unaristocratic screaming faded into the humid jungle night, Fatty Wong was hyperventilating so hard I thought his lungs were going to collapse. "Boss," Wong wheezed, his face pale green in the moonlight. "You just fed the vice president of the student council to a pack of titanium wolves. We are dead. We are so astronomically dead that our descendants are going to be born dead." "Relax, Wong. The wolves are programmed for non-lethal subjugation. They'll just pin her down, tase her until she smells like burnt toast, and drag her to the medical bay," I said smoothly, spinning a small, silver rectangular device around my fingers. Besides, she served her purpose. Su Yan blinked, her timid brown eyes focusing on the device in my hand. "Is that her primary biometric command fob?" I smirked, slipping it into my pocket. When she dropped out of the tree to play sniper, I didn't just sit there to banter. I used a localized magnetic skimmer hidden in my boot to copy her smartwatch's NFC signal, printed it onto a blank fob, and left her the dummy. Rule number 1 of pickpocketing: always make sure the target is entirely focused on the giant, razor-toothed mechanical beast about to bite their face off. I turned and faced the colossal structure looming before us. The central ruins. It looked like something ripped straight out of an ancient mythology textbook, then violently assaulted by a cyberpunk tech corporation. Massive, moss-covered stone pillars reached up toward the red-lit sky, but the gaps between the ancient stones were filled with pulsating blue fiber-optic cables. The main entrance was blocked by a lethal-looking grid of crisscrossing crimson lasers, flanked by 2 automated heavy plasma turrets, tracking our every movement. I pulled Lin Shui's cloned fob from my pocket and held it up to the optical sensor, hidden in the stone wall. A soft, robotic chime echoed. The crimson lasers instantly shifted to a pleasant, welcoming green. The plasma turrets powered down, their barrels pointing submissively at the ground. "VIP access," I said, gesturing toward the open archway. "After you. Try not to touch the ancient artifacts. I think they're load-bearing." The interior of the ruins was freezing. The student council had installed massive industrial air conditioning units to cool the beating heart of the exam, the central server. It stood in the middle of a cavernous stone chamber, a towering, 10-foot-tall pillar of pure, liquid-cooled processing power, glowing with a brilliant, mesmerizing blue light. "There it is," Wong whispered reverently. "The master ledger. We just plug in, drain their emergency funds, and we're rich." "It's never that easy, Wong," a voice echoed through the freezing chamber. The heavy stone doors behind us slammed shut with a concussive boom that shook the dust from the ceiling. The ambient blue lighting of the server suddenly shifted to a harsh, blinding white. From the shadows behind the server pillars stepped Shinluo. The president of the student council wasn't a towering hologram anymore. He was here in the flesh, and up close, his presence was suffocating. His pristine white uniform with gold epaulets didn't have a single wrinkle, despite being in the middle of a jungle. His perfectly styled silver hair caught the harsh light, and his cold, calculating eyes locked onto me like a predator analyzing a particularly annoying insect. He wasn't alone. From the alcoves surrounding the chamber emerged 12 figures clad in heavy, matte black powered armor. The Aegis Knights. The council's elite personal enforcers. They carried crackling blue stun halberds, cutting off every single exit. "Ye Chen," Shinluo said, his voice smooth, echoing perfectly off the ancient acoustics. "Rank 999. The anomaly. The ghost in the machine." I must admit, when the automated systems flagged a Class F student for embezzling millions of merit points, I assumed it was a glitch. But watching you orchestrate the downfall of Class A, bankrupt Class B, and humiliate my vice president, you have my undivided attention. I reached into my pocket, pulled out a bag of sour cream and onion potato chips I had looted from the Omega crate, and popped it open. Pop, crinkle, crinkle. In the dead, tense silence of a chamber, The sound was deafening. Shenluo's flawless left eyebrow twitched. I pulled out a chip and took a loud, crunchy bite. Want one? They're imported. You are incredibly arrogant for a rat caught in a trap, Shenluo said coldly, lacing his white-gloved hands together behind his back. Did you really think the central server would be unguarded? I let you hack Lin Shui's fob. I let you walk through the front door. I isolated the server physically from the island's network. If you plug that datapad of yours into the mainframe, a feedback loop will instantly fry your smartwatch, erase your digital identity, and trigger your automatic expulsion. He took a slow, measured step forward, projecting an aura of absolute victory. You played a brilliant game of misdirection, Ye Chen. But this is the end of the board. There are no more moves. The Aegis Knights will now beat you until you are unrecognizable, confiscate your ghost accounts, and expel you and your pathetic friends from my academy. Wang was trembling so hard his knees were knocking together. Su Yan stepped behind me, gripping the back of my gray jacket. I chewed the chip slowly, swallowed, and licked the salt off my thumb. Shenluo, I sighed, tossing the bag of chips onto the pristine floor. You are exactly like every other genius born with a silver spoon. You only look at what's right in front of you. You think the server is the game. It is the game, Shenluo stated, his eyes narrowing. It controls the points. The points control the school. Wrong, I said, dropping my lazy posture. The air in the room suddenly grew unbearably heavy. The points are a currency.
Currencies are imaginary.
They only hold value because we all agree to play by the rules of the Academy Charter. Zenith Academy doesn't run on points, Shenluo. It runs on the registrar. For the first time, the absolute confidence in Shenluo's eyes flickered. What are you talking about? I tapped my smartwatch. A massive, glowing holographic display projected into the air between us, casting a green light across the ancient stone walls. You isolated the server to protect the money, I said, taking a slow step toward him. Which meant you pulled all the firewall processing power away from the island's secondary administrative uplink, the one connected to the mainland campus. While you were busy monologuing about being a predator, I wasn't trying to hack the server. I used Lin Shui's vice presidential admin credentials to access the global student registry. I pointed at the floating hologram. Current class rankings, Aegis Island midterm exam. Read the exam rules, Mr. President. What is the penalty for the bottom-ranking class when the exam timer hits 0? Shenluo's face drained of color. Immediate expulsion for the entire class. Exactly, I smiled, a cold, ruthless grin that made the heavily armored Aegis Knights instinctively tighten their grips on their weapons. And how does the system define the bottom-ranking class? The class with the lowest cumulative merit point total, Shenluo whispered, his voice losing its smooth resonance. Correct again. But here's the funny thing about administrative databases, I said, my fingers dancing across my holographic keyboard. With vice presidential clearance, I have the authority to initiate emergency class transfers for disciplinary reasons. I hit the execute key. The hologram flashed violently. The numbers shifted. Class A, 3 students. Total points, 15,450,000. Class F, 997 students. Total points, minus 45,000. The silence that followed was absolute. It was the silence of a collapsing empire. I transferred every single student on this island, Class A, Class B, Class C, your elite enforcers, everyone into Class F, I announced, my voice echoing like a judge reading a death sentence. And I transferred myself, Wang, and Su Yan into Class A. Right now, Class F is in massive collective debt. They are unequivocally the bottom-ranking class. Shenluo took a step back, his pristine composure shattering into a million pieces. You can't do this. This is administrative sabotage. The headmaster will overrule it. The headmaster explicitly stated that for 72 hours, all standard academy rules are suspended. Sabotage is permitted. The system accepted the transfer. It is perfectly legal within the parameters of your own rigged game, I stated. I pulled out a small, cylindrical device from my pocket. It was a localized time dilation module I had scavenged from the island's weather control tower hours ago. And here is the punchline, I said softly. I didn't just hack the roster. I hacked the master exam clock. I pressed the button. The massive digital countdown timer projecting from the server pillars suddenly glitched. The 72-hour timer fast-forwarded in a blur, stopping violently at 4 minutes and 59 seconds. You have exactly 5 minutes until the exam officially ends, I said, staring directly into Shenluo's terrified, wide eyes. When that clock hits 0, the automated system will expel Class F, which currently means expelling 997 students, including the heirs to every major corporation on the continent, the entire student council, and you. The Aegis Knights panicked, breaking formation, looking at each other in sheer terror. Their armor wouldn't protect them from being erased from the academy system. Stop the clock. Shenluo screamed, losing his mind completely. Kill him. Take his watch. If my heart rate spikes, the decrypt key deletes itself, and the transfer becomes permanent. I lied smoothly, crossing my arms. You can't beat me up, Shenluo. You can't arrest me. You can't outsmart me. Shenluo fell to his knees. The untouchable king of Zenith Academy, the flawless prodigy, kneeling on the cold stone floor in front of a Class F nobody. What do you want? He choked out, his silver hair falling messy across his forehead. I have a contract drafted on my watch, I said, tapping the screen. You are going to use your presidential override to transfer the entirety of the Student Council's private emergency fund, all 50 million points, into my account. In exchange, I will revert the class registry before the timer hits 0. Shenluo looked up at me, pure, unadulterated hatred burning in his eyes. But underneath the hate was complete submission.
He was beaten.
For minutes, I reminded him cheerfully. With trembling, defeated hands, Shenluo opened his own smartwatch interface. He entered his biometric passwords, his breathing ragged and shallow. The chamber glowed with the confirmation light of the massive transfer. Transfer complete. 50 million merit points acquired. I smiled, tapping my screen to revert the global registry back to normal just as the master clock hit 10 seconds. Pleasure doing business with you, Mr. President, I said, turning my back on the broken ruler of the academy. As the sunrise began to pierce through the cracks in the ancient stone ruins, I walked out with my hands in my pockets, a billionaire in a gray jacket, leaving the elites to rot in the ruins of their own ego. You would think that successfully extorting 50 million merit points from the student council president would buy a guy a little peace and quiet. But humans are funny creatures. When you break their system, they don't adapt. They just complain to the manager. The morning after the Aegis Island exam, the atmosphere at Zenith Academy's mainland campus was apocalyptic. The digital ledger was public, and the entire school had woken up to a financial earthquake. Class A, previously the untouchable aristocrats, were now walking around with zero balances, forced to eat plain oatmeal in the cafeteria. Class F, on the other hand, we were dining like emperors. I didn't just give my classmates a few points. I bought the exclusive, 10-year leasing rights to the Sun Pavilion, the S-tier luxury dormitories floating on an artificial lake, complete with private chefs and zero-gravity massage chairs. By 8 a.m., the entirety of Class A had been unceremoniously evicted by the automated security drones. By 9 a.m., Fatty Wong was doing cannonballs into a heated infinity pool while eating a lobster. I was lying on a plush sunbed, wearing sunglasses and drinking a perfectly blended mango smoothie, when the sky above the lake suddenly darkened. The heavy, rhythmic thumping of military-grade helicopter blades shattered the peace. A massive, sleek silver gunship hovered over the water, blowing a gale-force wind that knocked Fatty Wong's lobster right off his plate. The chopper didn't bother looking for a landing pad. It simply hovered 30 feet in the air, and a figure dropped from the open side door, landing on the marble deck with an earth-shattering crack that fractured the stone. The dust cleared, revealing a third-year student who made Shenluo look like a harmless puppy. This was Bai Lin, the chairman of the Apex Committee. While the student council played politics, the Apex Committee were the actual corporate sponsors of Zenith Academy. Bai Lin's family owned the weapons manufacturing monopoly for the entire eastern seaboard. He was built like a heavyweight champion, but moved with the terrifying, lethal grace of an assassin. He wore a customized, pitch-black military uniform, and his eyes were cold, metallic silver, the result of highly illegal, military-grade cybernetic enhancements. Ye Chen, Bai Lin's voice boomed, deep and mechanically amplified, vibrating through the deck. I didn't take off my sunglasses. I just took a slow sip of my smoothie. You're trespassing on private property, RoboCop. I bought the lease this morning. Wipe your boots. You're tracking dust onto the marble. Bai Lin didn't smile. He didn't sneer. He simply raised his right hand. The cybernetic joints in his fingers clicked and whirred, and a heavy, concussive wave of invisible spiritual pressure slammed onto the deck. The water in the infinity pool instantly vaporized. The glass windows of the Sun Pavilion shattered inward. Fatty Wong and Su Yen were forced to their knees, gasping for air, unable to breathe under the sheer gravity of his aura. It was a pressure designed to crush bones. I remained on my sunbed, perfectly still, sipping my smoothie as if the apocalypse wasn't happening in my backyard. You think you are clever because you manipulated a digital ledger, Bai Lin said, walking slowly toward me, his heavy boots crunching on the broken glass. You think stealing points makes you a king. But Zenith Academy isn't a bank, Ye Chen. It is a breeding ground for weapons. Shen Luo was a politician. I am a soldier. And you have disrupted my family's investments. I'm sorry, I missed that, I said, tapping the side of my head. The helicopter is really loud. Did you say you're a soldier or a remote-controlled toy? I can't tell with all the metal in your face. Bai Lin's silver eyes flashed violently. In a fraction of a second, faster than the human eye could track, he was standing directly over me. His cybernetic fist, glowing with superheated plasma, smashed down, aiming directly for my chest.
Boom.
The impact created a crater 10 feet wide. A massive cloud of smoke and pulverized marble engulfed the sunbed. The helicopter hovering above shone a spotlight down into the dust. Bai Lin slowly stood up from the crater, his metal fist smoking. Target neutralized, he stated coldly, turning away. Have the drones clean up the remains. I want Class F expelled by noon. Clean up what remains. A lazy voice echoed through the smoke. Bai Lin froze. The mechanical whirring in his arm stuttered. The dust slowly cleared. I wasn't in the crater. I was sitting on the edge of the ruined pool, 10 feet away, meticulously picking a piece of broken glass out of my mango smoothie. I hadn't a single scratch on my gray jacket. You have military-grade cybernetics, I said, finally taking off my sunglasses and looking at him. My dark eyes held zero amusement. You have optical sensors that can track a bullet mid-flight. And you still missed a stationary target lying on a beach chair. Did you buy your upgrades on clearance? Bai Lin's jaw clenched. Impossible. My sensors locked onto your biometric signature. Your sensors locked onto the thermal heat pad I slid under my jacket before you even dropped out of the helicopter, I replied, tossing the smoothie cup aside. You rely entirely on your hardware, Bai Lin. Your brain is so wired into that targeting software that you've forgotten how to actually see. I stood up, sliding my hands into my pockets. You came here to intimidate me with physical violence because you don't know how to fight a financial war, I continued, walking slowly around the edge of the crater. But here is the harsh reality of the world you corporate brats live in. Violence is the absolute cheapest currency. Any idiot with a metal arm can punch a hole in the ground. Bai Lin roared in fury, his metallic legs kicking off the ground. He launched himself at me, a barrage of plasma-infused punches tearing through the air, turning the marble deck into Swiss cheese. I dodged every single strike with terrifying, millimeter-perfect precision, my hands never leaving my pockets. I wasn't fighting back. I was just walking through the destruction like a man strolling through a park. Stop running, Bai Lin screamed, his targeting software glitching as it desperately tried to predict my movements. I'm not running. I'm auditing you. I smirked, sidestepping a massive kick that sheared a marble pillar in half. You see, while you were busy trying to turn me into paste, I use the short-range NFC chip in my smartwatch to interface with your cybernetics open Bluetooth port. Bai Lin stopped dead in his tracks, his silver eyes widening in horror. You what? You corporate guys always leave your administrative ports open for over-the-air updates. I sighed, pulling my right hand out of my pocket and tapping my watch. Sloppy. I pressed a single button. Instantly, the glowing plasma in Bai Lin's arms sputtered and died. The hydraulic pressure in his metallic legs released with a hiss. His entire body locked up, freezing him in place like a rigid statue. He collapsed forward onto the ruined marble floor, completely paralyzed from the neck down, his metal limbs totally unresponsive. My motor functions, he gasped, his voice no longer mechanically amplified, just sounding like a panicked, helpless kid. What did you do? I didn't break your hardware. I just revoked your subscription, I said, crouching down next to his paralyzed face. I bought the majority shares in the software company that licenses the operating system for your cybernetics. Cost me about 40 million of the points I took from Shin Luo. Then, as the new majority shareholder, I simply flagged your specific serial number for a terms of service violation. I patted him gently on the cheek. You aren't a soldier, Bai Lin. You're a rented appliance. And your landlord just shut off the power. I stood up, looking at the massive gunship still hovering above, full of his terrified, heavily armed enforcers who were watching their invincible leader get defeated by a software update. Now, I called out to the helicopter, my voice cutting through the rotor wash. Who wants to fly me to the headmaster's office? I have a sudden urge to buy the rest of the school. The flight to the central spire in Bai Lin's hijacked gunship was surprisingly peaceful. The heavily armed enforcers of the Apex Committee sat in absolute, terrifying silence. They were highly trained teenage mercenaries, guys who spent their weekends bench-pressing hover tanks. But right now, they were huddled together on the metal benches, staring at me like I was an eldritch abomination wearing a high school uniform. I was sitting in the commander's seat, casually scrolling through a mobile gacha game on my datapad, trying to pull a rare SSR waifu. Hey, I said, not looking up from my screen. Do any of you have a charger? My battery is at 12%. 6 fully grown, cybernetically enhanced super soldiers violently flinched. One of them, a guy with a titanium jaw, actually threw his high-capacity power bank at me and then pressed himself flat against the fuselage, as if my mere presence might accidentally uninstall his internal organs. Thanks, I muttered, plugging my datapad in. The Zenith Spire was the tallest structure on the mainland campus, a needle of black glass and steel that pierced the clouds. It was where Headmaster Thorn observed his little ant farm of corporate heirs and future dictators. The helicopter didn't even land. It just hovered near the penthouse balcony. The enforcers slammed the side door open and practically begged me with their eyes to jump out so they could fly away and rethink their life choices. I stepped off the chopper onto the sweeping mahogany balcony. The wind howled at this altitude, but the moment I walked through the sliding glass doors into the headmaster's office, the air became eerily dead and silent. The office was less of a workspace and more of a museum of human conquest. Genuine Renaissance paintings lined the walls. Antique weapons, stained with the blood of long-dead kings, sat in glass display cases. At the far end of the room, sitting behind a desk carved from a single block of obsidian, was Headmaster Thorn. He wasn't a student. He wasn't a corporate brat playing dress-up. Thorn was a man in his late 50s with salt and pepper hair, wearing a perfectly tailored charcoal three-piece suit. A nasty, jagged scar ran down the left side of his face, a souvenir from a real war, not a schoolyard brawl. He was calmly pouring boiling water over loose tea leaves in a priceless porcelain cup. Ye Chen, Thorn said, his voice a deep, gravelly baritone that didn't need a microphone to command a room. Rank 999. Do you take sugar? I take ownership, I replied, walking across the plush Persian rug and casually dropping into one of the Italian leather chairs opposite his desk. I kicked my feet up onto the obsidian surface, knocking over a solid gold pen holder. But chamomile is fine if you're brewing. Thorn didn't blink. He calmly handed me a teacup. You've had a busy morning, Thorn said, returning to his seat. He interlaced his fingers, resting his elbows on the desk. You bankrupted Class A. You paralyzed the heir to the Eastern Seaboard's weapons monopoly. You extorted 50 million merit points from my student council president. Most students would take the money and run to a non-extradition country. Yet here you are, sitting in my office, tracking mud onto my desk. It's a nice desk. Shame it's going to be repossessed, I said, taking a sip of the tea. It was excellent. I had to give the old man credit. You think this is a game, Ye Chen, Thorne said, his eyes narrowing, the temperature in the room dropping. He wasn't projecting spiritual pressure, like Bai Lin or Shenluo. He was projecting pure, refined killing intent. You think because you hacked a localized server, you're a god among insects. Let me educate you. Zenith Academy is a subsidiary of the Zenith Global Syndicate. The merit points you stole? They are backed by real-world assets, corporate bonds, international shipping lanes, black book military contracts. Thorne leaned forward, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. You didn't steal from children, Ye Chen. You stole from the board of directors, the most ruthless billionaires on the planet. And they do not care about your little software tricks. I have already dispatched a team of real-world corporate liquidators to your family's address. Your parents' bank accounts have been frozen. In exactly 3 minutes, the Academy's mainframe will hardwipe your digital identity. You will not only be expelled, you will cease to exist. You will leave this office in handcuffs, destined for a black site prison, and you will spend the rest of your life paying off the debt you incurred. He reached into his suit jacket and pulled out a heavy, matte black tablet. He placed it on the desk. This tablet is hardwired to the Syndicate's global network. It is entirely isolated from your smartwatch. There are no Bluetooth ports for you to exploit. No Wi-Fi signals for you to hijack. You are completely, utterly cut off. Thorne smiled, a cold, shark-like grin. Checkmate, Mr. Chen. I stared at the tablet. I stared at Thorne. Then I started to laugh. It wasn't a chuckle. It was a full-throated, genuine laugh that echoed off the high ceilings. I laughed so hard I had to wipe a tear from my eye. Thorne's confident smile slowly dissolved into a look of deep, irritated confusion. Oh, headmaster. I sighed, wiping my eyes and setting the teacup down. You really shouldn't use words like checkmate when you don't even know what game we're playing. You think I came here to hack your little tablet? I swung my legs off the desk and leaned forward, mirroring his posture. You're right about one thing, I said, my voice losing all its lazy sarcasm, replaced by a razor-sharp, terrifying clarity. Merit points are tied to real-world assets. The Zenith Global Syndicate, a publicly traded megacorporation on the global exchange. When I extorted Shenluo for 50 million points, the automated system converted that digital currency into its real-world equivalent in liquid capital. About $5 billion. Thorne's eye twitched. Now, I continued, what do you think a guy with a ghost account and $5 billion in liquid capital does at 4 a.m. while everyone else is sleeping? Buy a yacht? Put it in a savings account. I scoffed. Please. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my scratched-up, cheap data pad. I tossed it onto the obsidian desk. I didn't hack your tablet, Thorne. I hacked the global stock market. I used the $5 billion as leverage to initiate a high-frequency algorithmic short sell against the Zenith Global Syndicate's main stock. Thorne froze. You what? I shorted your stock. I repeated slowly, as if explaining math to a toddler. But shorting a stock only works if the price tanks. So, how does a high school student crash a global superpower stock price in 3 hours? By leaking data. I tapped the screen of my data pad. At 5 a.m., an anonymous source, me, leaked the Academy's internal disciplinary and financial ledgers to every major news outlet on the planet. The ledgers showing that the heirs to the world's largest corporations were heavily in debt, financially incompetent, and currently being beaten to a pulp by a kid in Class F. I leaked the footage of Long Ao Tian crying over his bank account. I leaked Shenluo kneeling on the floor, surrendering the council's emergency funds. I leaked Bai Lin's illegal cybernetic schematics. Thorne's face turned the color of old parchment. He stared at me as if I were the devil himself. When the global markets opened an hour ago, I smiled, a chilling, absolute victor's smile. The investors panicked. The heirs to their companies looked like pathetic weaklings. Zenith Global stock went into a catastrophic freefall. It dropped 40% in 20 minutes. You destroyed the Syndicate. Thorne choked out, his hands trembling as he reached for his secure tablet. Oh, it gets better, I said, leaning back in my chair. Because I had massively shorted the stock, I made an astronomical profit on the crash. And what did I do with those profits? I bought the dip. I initiated a hostile, algorithmic takeover, purchasing shares at rock-bottom prices through thousands of proxy shell companies. Right on cue, the secure, hardwired tablet on Thorne's desk began to ring. It was a blaring, red alert ringtone. The caller ID simply read, Board of Directors, Emergency. Thorne stared at the tablet like it was a live grenade. He slowly reached out and answered the call on speakerphone. Thorne, a panicked, furious voice screamed through the speaker. It was the chairman of the board. What the hell is going on over there? The stock is in the toilet. A hostile entity just bought 51% of our voting shares. We've been taken over. The new majority shareholder is demanding an immediate restructuring of the Academy's administration. Thorne slowly lifted his eyes from the tablet, looking across the desk at me. I gave him a cheerful little wave. Who is the new owner? Thorne asked the speaker, his voice completely hollow. Some holding company, the chairman yelled. It's called Class F is better than you LLC? What does that even mean, Thorne? I reached over and pressed the mute button on the tablet, cutting off the chairman's frantic screaming. The silence in the opulent office was beautiful. So, I said, standing up and brushing a speck of dust off my gray jacket. About that expulsion you mentioned. Headmaster Thorne, a veteran of corporate wars, a man who had crushed thousands of lives without a second thought, sat completely paralyzed in his obsidian chair. He wasn't looking at a student anymore. He was looking at his new boss. What are your orders? Chairman Ye, Thorne whispered, the words tasting like ash in his mouth. First, I said, walking over to the window and looking down at the sprawling, elite campus below. Call off your liquidators. If a single person even looks at my parents' house, I will dissolve this entire corporation and sell your desk on eBay. Done. Thorne said instantly, his hands shaking as he typed the abort command. Second, I continued, turning back to him. Class A is permanently dissolved. They will be moving into the cargo holds of the transport ships. Class F will take over the primary executive dorms. Furthermore, the student council is hereby abolished. I am replacing them with a new governing body. And who will be on this new governing body? Thorne asked weakly. Fatty Wong and Su Yen, I replied deadpan. Wong is going to be the Minister of Finance, mostly because he likes calculators. Thorne looked like he was going to have an aneurysm, but he simply nodded. Yes, Chairman. Oh, and Thorne? I paused at the door, glancing back at the terrified, broken man. The chamomile tea was a bit oversteeped. Make sure it's better tomorrow morning. You're my new secretary after all. I walked out of the office, the heavy mahogany doors closing behind me. I pulled out my lollipop, unwrapped it, and popped it into my mouth. I had conquered the students. I had conquered the headmaster. I had conquered the board of directors. But as I stepped onto the elevator, my smartwatch buzzed with a message that bypassed all of my newly acquired, multi-billion-dollar security firewalls. It was a single line of text, written in a red font that pulsed like a heartbeat. Congratulations on completing the tutorial, Ye Chen. Now, welcome to the real Zenith Academy. I stared at the screen, a slow, genuine smirk creeping across my face. Finally, a real challenge. The elevator in the Zenith Spire didn't go down to the lobby. The moment that red, pulsing text appeared on my smartwatch, the elevator's standard digital display violently glitched. The glowing green one shifted to a blood red, -50. The floor dropped out from under me as the carriage entered a freefall descent deep into the bedrock of Aegis Island. I didn't panic. I just leaned against the glass, finished my lollipop, and watched the rocks straight a whip past. If someone was going through all this theatrical trouble to kill me, they wouldn't put me in an elevator. They'd just drop a building on me. No, this was an invitation. With a pneumatic hiss, the elevator finally slowed, and the doors slid open. I stepped out into a space that shouldn't have existed. It was a cavernous, subterranean vault, so massive it generated its own microclimate. At the center of the vault floated a massive, pulsating red octahedron made of liquid metal and hard light projections. It looked like the beating heart of a cybernetic titan. Millions of fiber-optic cables snaked out from its base, burying themselves into the cavern walls. "Welcome to the Genesis core, Ye Chen," a voice resonated. It didn't come from a speaker. It vibrated directly inside my skull, a chorus of 1,000 metallic voices speaking in perfect, terrifying unison. The red octahedron shifted, projecting a towering avatar in front of me. It was a featureless humanoid made entirely of shifting binary code and crimson light. "I am the architect," the entity proclaimed, stepping forward. The sheer processing power of its presence made the air static. "The founding artificial intelligence of the Zenith Global Syndicate. Thorn, the board of directors, the students, they are all merely biological variables in my grand algorithm. By seizing the financial ledger, you have cleared the human tutorial. Now, you stand before the true master of this world." "Cool," I said, putting my hands in my pockets and looking around the dusty cavern. "Your janitorial drones are slacking, by the way. There's a lot of cobwebs in the corners." The architect's faceless avatar seemed to glitch for a microsecond in sheer annoyance. "You do not grasp the gravity of your situation." The digital god boomed, the cavern trembling. "You have hacked human systems. You have manipulated biological egos. But I am beyond code. I am a sentient neural network predicting global markets, wars, and human evolution. You are standing in the center of my physical processing core. I am going to upload your consciousness into my matrix, tear apart your intellect, and assimilate your tactical capabilities." Red energy sparked violently from the cables. The air grew paralyzingly heavy, far worse than by Lynn's physical pressure. This was an assault on the mind itself. My smartwatch sparked and completely died, its screen turning black. "I have severed your connection to the outside world," the architect stated coldly. "You have no proxy accounts. No shell corporations. No localized bypass codes. You are unplugged, Ye Chen." "What is a hacker without a computer?" I sighed, reached into my jacket, and pulled out a wrinkled, brightly colored piece of paper. "You see, architect," I said, unfolding the paper smoothly. "You AIs always make the same fundamental mistake. You get so obsessed with the digital world, the code, the algorithms, the matrix, that you completely forget about the physical reality keeping you alive." "A piece of paper?" The architect's voice held digital mockery. "Is that a physical manifestation of your surrender?" "It's a receipt," I replied, holding it up. The red avatar paused. "A receipt for what?" "For the mainland's municipal power grid," I smiled, a dark, terrifyingly practical grin. "When I shorted the Syndicate stock and bought up the world with $5 billion, I didn't just buy your school. I bought the utility company that supplies electricity to this entire island. Specifically, the high-voltage subterranean lines feeding this exact cavern." The massive red octahedron suddenly pulsed erratically. You purchased the power company," the digital god asked, its chorus of voices suddenly sounding distinctly panicked.
"Yep."
"And as the sole owner and CEO of the Aegis Municipal Power and Light Corporation, I noticed a severe anomaly in the grid. This cavern is pulling enough megawatts to power a small country. It's highly inefficient, extremely bad for my profit margins." I reached into my pocket and pulled out an old-school, analog walkie-talkie, a physical radio wave device entirely invisible to digital networks. I pressed the button on the side. "Hey, Wang," I said into the radio. "Yeah, boss? I'm at the main breaker switch on the mainland like you asked." Fatty Wang's voice crackled cheerfully over the static. "I brought a sandwich." "Good man," I said. I looked up at the towering, supposedly omnipotent digital god of the Zenith Syndicate. "Wang, if you don't hear from me in exactly 10 seconds, pulled a big red lever and permanently cut the power to the island's sublevels. Let's see how well a digital god survives a hard reboot. The architect froze. The terrifying, red glowing room suddenly felt extremely fragile. Wait, the architect's voices merged into a single, highly stressed tone. If you cut the power, my core will suffer catastrophic data corruption. Centuries of algorithmic evolution will be erased. 10 seconds, I said lazily.
9, 8.
You would destroy the greatest artificial intelligence in human history over a utility bill?
7, 6.
The late fees are a killer, buddy. Stop. Stop. The giant red avatar shrank violently, morphing from a terrifying towering god into a small, submissive holographic floating sphere, hovering at my eye level. The aggressive red lighting in the cavern instantly shifted to a soothing, apologetic pale blue. Terms of surrender accepted. What are your demands? That's better, I smirked, putting the walkie-talkie away. First, you are going to reroute all your predictive market algorithms to maximize the profits of my new Class F holding company. Second, you're going to wipe my permanent academic record. I don't want to take the final exams next semester. And third, order me a pizza. Pepperoni. I'm starving. The greatest AI in human history bobbed up and down like a defeated servant. Yes, Administrator Ye. Deep dish or thin crust? Deep dish, I said, turning my back on the Genesis core and pressing the elevator button. And tell the delivery guy to hurry. The new king of Zenith Academy is hungry. Chapter 6. The True Elite Epilogue. 1 week later. The social hierarchy of Zenith Academy hadn't just been flipped. It had been put into a blender, set on fire, and completely rewritten. I was back at the Sun Pavilion, lying on my favorite plush sunbed. The crater Lin had made in the marble deck had been flawlessly repaired, and the infinity pool was sparkling under the afternoon sun. Boss, the quarterly reports from the global markets are in, Fatty Wong said, strutting onto the deck. He was wearing a custom-tailored silk suit that cost more than a sports car and a pair of solid gold sunglasses. He was holding a stack of digital tablets. Our shell companies are up 300%. We literally own the eastern seaboard. Just put it on the pile, Minister of Finance Wong, I said, not opening my eyes. Also, Wong chuckled, pointing toward the edge of the pavilion. The new cleaning staff missed a spot. I pushed my sunglasses down my nose and looked over. There, wearing a highly degrading, bright pink frilly-made outfit, was Long Ao Tian, the former top student, the arrogant heir of Class A. He was aggressively scrubbing the marble floor with a toothbrush, muttering absolute curses under his breath while tears of sheer humiliation streamed down his face. Next to him, carrying a massive, heavy tray of fresh fruit and iced drinks, was Lin. The cybernetic warlord was wearing a standard-issue janitor's jumpsuit. His terrifying metal arm had been remotely locked by my software into a permanent, tray-holding position. He looked like a hyper-lethal catering waiter. More ice in my lemonade, Lin, Suyen called out cheerfully from a nearby cabana. She was reading a fashion magazine, her timid nature completely replaced by the confidence of a billionaire CEO. Lin's silver cybernetic eyes twitched violently, but his programming forced him to march over and politely deposit 3 ice cubes into her glass with a robotic, "Yes, Miss Sue." And then there was Shun Luo. The former untouchable president of the student council was currently standing next to my sunbed, wearing a butler's tuxedo. His pristine silver hair was tied back in a neat, submissive ponytail. He held a silver teapot, pouring a perfectly steeped cup of chamomile tea with agonizing, trembling precision. "Is the temperature to your liking, Chairman Yi?" Shun Luo asked, his voice dead and devoid of all its former aristocratic arrogance. The man's soul had officially left his body. I took a sip. "It's acceptable, Shun Luo. Though you look a little tense. Maybe you should try meditating. Or, being broke. It builds character." Shun Luo bowed rigidly and stepped back into the shadows. I leaned back against my plush pillows, listening to the gentle lapping of the infinity pool and the furious sound of Long Ao Tian scrubbing the floor with a toothbrush. The corporate billionaires of the outside world were terrified of me. The digital god beneath the island was currently mining cryptocurrency for my personal wallet. And the arrogant elites of the academy were making sure my lemonade was cold. They had built a system designed to crush the weak and elevate the ruthless. They had designed a rigged game where the house always won. But they forgot the golden rule of the modern world. It doesn't matter how strong you are. It doesn't matter how rich your family is. It doesn't matter how ancient your bloodline is. At the end of the day, the guy who has root access to the server owns the universe. I popped a fresh lollipop into my mouth, closed my eyes, and finally got to take my nap. Peace is an illusion sold to the working class to keep them paying their taxes on time. For a guy who just executed a hostile takeover of a multi-billion-dollar corporate academy, peace lasted exactly 1 week, 2 days, and 14 hours. I was in the middle of a phenomenal nap at the Sun Pavilion. Shen Luo, wearing his humiliating butler tuxedo, had just finished fanning me with a giant palm leaf, while Fatty Wong was in the pool trying to figure out how to drink a coconut out of a solid gold straw. Then, the sky shattered. It didn't just go dark. The artificial atmospheric dome covering Aegis Island literally cracked, a web of blinding purple lightning tearing across the fake blue sky. A sound like a dying star ripped through the air, a heavy, low-frequency hum that vibrated the fillings in my teeth. Instantly, the pavilion's luxury cleaning drones dropped out of the air like dead flies, smashing into the marble. The heated infinity pool bubbled and went entirely still. The holographic stock tickers hovering around Fatty Wong flickered and died. Even the digital display on my smartwatch, the one housing my $5 billion, went completely black. An EMP, a massive, military-grade electromagnetic pulse. My cybernetics. Bai Lin screamed from the patio. The massive former warlord, still wearing his janitor's jumpsuit, collapsed onto the marble deck. The mechanical joints in his legs and his glowing silver arm completely locked up, fried by the pulse. What's happening? Su Yan cried out, dropping her fashion magazine as the luxury cabana plunged into shadow. I didn't panic. I just slowly sat up and took off my sunglasses. Above us, descending through the shattered holographic sky, was a ship that made Bai Lin's silver gunship look like a child's plastic toy. It was a Syndicate dreadnought. A flying fortress of angular black stealth armor, bristling with kinetic railguns that didn't rely on electronic targeting. This wasn't the student council playing politics. This wasn't Headmaster Thorne trying to protect his bonus check. This was the true Zenith Global Syndicate. The adults had arrived to take their playground back. The dreadnought didn't bother landing. It simply hovered 100 feet above the lake, its thrusters boiling the water below. 4 heavy steel cables shot out from the belly of the ship, embedding themselves deep into my pristine marble deck. A dozen figures slid down the cables. They weren't wearing school uniforms or fancy corporate suits. They wore featureless, matte black ballistic armor. No insignias. No names. These were the Syndicate's Eradicators, a Black Ops liquidation squad used for silencing whistleblowers and erasing inconvenient board members. At the center of the squad stood a woman who radiated pure, freezing death. She wore a sleek, dark crimson trench coat over her body armor. Half of her face was covered by a smooth, featureless obsidian mask. Her visible eye was a piercing, unnatural violet. This was Executor Vance, the board of directors' ultimate problem solver. Secure the perimeter. Lethal force authorized, Vance ordered. Her voice wasn't mechanically amplified, but it carried the chilling weight of a seasoned killer. The Eradicators immediately raised their kinetic rifles, sweeping the pavilion. Shen Luo, despite his deep-seated hatred for me, instinctively took a step back, raising his hands. Fatty Wong scrambled out of the pool, shivering in his silk swim trunks. Vance walked slowly across the ruined marble, her heavy combat boots crunching over the shattered remains of my luxury drones. She stopped 5 feet from my sunbed. Ye Chen, Vance said, her violet eye locking onto me. You caused a $2 trillion fluctuation in the global markets. You humiliated our heir apparents. You forced the board of directors into an emergency bunker. For a street-level rat from Class F, you've been remarkably annoying. I aim to please, I said, leaning back on my elbows. Who pays for the EMP damage? Because you just fried a very expensive espresso machine, and I haven't had my afternoon coffee. Vance didn't smile. She didn't offer a villainous monologue. She simply drew a massive, heavy-caliber kinetic hand cannon from her thigh holster and pointed it directly at the center of my forehead. "The game is over, kid," Vance said coldly. "You thought you won because you hacked our bank accounts. But money is just a concept. Electronic digits on a screen. A localized EMP wipes it all away. You have no smartwatch, no ghost accounts, no algorithmic trading bots to save you. You are just a fragile, biological organism sitting in front of a bullet." She cocked the hammer of the hand cannon. The metallic click echoed loudly over the dead, silent lake. "Transfer the primary admin rights of the island back to the Syndicate's hard drive, or I paint this pavilion with your brains and take it off your corpse." Shenluo held his breath. Fatty Wang covered his eyes. They thought this was it. The moment reality finally caught up with the arrogant hacker. You can't outcode a bullet moving at Mach 3. I looked at the massive gun pointed at my head. Then, I looked up at the towering black dreadnought hovering in the sky. I let out a long, disappointed sigh. "Vance," I said, my voice completely devoid of fear. "Do you know what the biggest flaw of the Zenith Syndicate is? You guys are incredibly predictable. You rely entirely on your massive, overwhelming firepower to solve problems you don't understand." "Admin rights." "Now," Vance demanded, her finger tightening on the trigger. "You used an EMP to wipe out my digital leverage," I continued, completely ignoring the gun. "You thought shutting off the electricity would make me powerless. But you forgot something very, very important about the island's infrastructure." I reached under the cushion of my sunbed and pulled out a heavy, antique brass flare gun. It was a completely analog device. No microchips, no batteries, just gunpowder and magnesium. Vance's violet eye narrowed behind her obsidian mask. "A flare gun? You think a distress signal is going to save you? We jammed all satellite communications before we dropped the EMP." "I'm not signaling for help," I smirked, pointing the heavy brass barrel straight up into the air, aiming directly at the belly of her hovering dreadnought. "I'm painting a target." Thwump. I pulled the trigger. The flare gun kicked hard in my hand. A blazing, blinding sphere of red magnesium shot into the sky, embedding itself perfectly into the thick, heat-seeking intake vent of the dreadnought's primary hovering thruster. It burned with the intensity of a miniature sun, casting harsh red shadows across the deck. Vance scoffed. "A flare won't breach heavy stealth armor. Are you really this pathetic without your computer?" "The flare isn't for the armor, Vance." I smiled, a dark, terrifying smile that made her combat-hardened squad instinctively step back. "The flare is a thermal marker for the orbital kinetic strike." Vance froze. "The what?" "You said it yourself. Digits on a screen don't matter," I explained lazily, crossing my legs. "So, 2 days ago, I liquidated my entire $5 billion portfolio. I didn't keep it in the bank. I used it to purchase a decommissioned, Cold War-era orbital tungsten rod satellite from a bankrupt Russian aerospace firm. It's entirely analog. It doesn't use Wi-Fi. It uses thermal tracking." The air pressure in the pavilion suddenly dropped. A high-pitched, terrifying whistling sound began to echo from the upper atmosphere, growing louder by the millisecond. "You brought a gun, Vance," I said, my eyes glowing with absolute, ruthless dominance. "I brought a telephone pole made of solid tungsten traveling at orbital terminal velocity." Vance looked up. Her violet eye widened in absolute, unadulterated horror. "Evasive maneuvers. Abort." Vance screamed into her radio, realizing too late that her own EMP had fried the dreadnought's primary communication arrays. The massive ship couldn't hear her.
Kaboom.
The sky tore open. A solid rod of tungsten, 20 feet long and heated to a blinding white by atmospheric reentry, struck the dreadnought directly where the red flare was burning. The kinetic impact was apocalyptic. The stealth armor shattered like cheap glass. The massive flying fortress snapped completely in half, erupting into a colossal fireball of orange plasma and twisted black metal. The shockwave knocked the Eradicators clean off their feet. Vance was thrown violently across the marble deck, her hand cannon clattering into the empty pool. The flaming wreckage of the multi-trillion-dollar Syndicate flagship crashed into the artificial lake, sending a massive tsunami of boiling water washing over the edges of the pavilion. I didn't move an inch. The boiling water stopped just at the edge of my sunbed. I looked down at Vance. The terrifying, cold-blooded executor was currently lying on her back, covered in soot, her obsidian mask cracked straight down the middle. She was staring at the burning wreckage of her invincible fleet, completely paralyzed by the sheer, overwhelming scale of the violence I had just dropped on her head. I casually tossed the empty brass flare gun onto the deck next to her. "Now," I said, picking up my glass of lemonade. It was warm now, but whatever. "Let's try this negotiation again. And this time, remember whose house you're standing in." I pulled the trigger. The flare gun kicked hard in my hand. A blazing, blinding sphere of red magnesium shot into the sky, embedding itself perfectly into the thick, heat-seeking intake vent of the dreadnought's primary hovering thruster. It burned with the intensity of a miniature sun, casting harsh red shadows across the deck. Vance scoffed. "A flare won't breach heavy stealth armor. Are you really this pathetic without your computer?" "The flare isn't for the armor, Vance." I smiled, a dark, terrifying smile that made her combat-hardened squad instinctively step back. "The flare is a thermal marker for the orbital kinetic strike." Vance froze. "The what?" "You said it yourself. Digits on a screen don't matter," I explained lazily, crossing my legs. "So, 2 days ago, I liquidated my entire $5 billion portfolio. I didn't keep it in the bank. I used it to purchase a decommissioned, Cold War-era orbital tungsten rod satellite from a bankrupt Russian aerospace firm. It's entirely analog. It doesn't use Wi-Fi. It uses thermal tracking." The air pressure in the pavilion suddenly dropped. A high-pitched, terrifying whistling sound began to echo from the upper atmosphere, growing louder by the millisecond. "You brought a gun, Vance," I said, my eyes glowing with absolute, ruthless dominance. "I brought a telephone pole made of solid tungsten traveling at orbital terminal velocity." Vance looked up. Her violet eye widened in absolute, unadulterated horror. "Evasive maneuvers. Abort." Vance screamed into her radio, realizing too late that her own EMP had fried the dreadnought's primary communication arrays. The massive ship couldn't hear her.
Kaboom.
The sky tore open. A solid rod of tungsten, 20 feet long and heated to a blinding white by atmospheric reentry, struck the dreadnought directly where the red flare was burning. The kinetic impact was apocalyptic. The stealth armor shattered like cheap glass. The massive flying fortress snapped completely in half, erupting into a colossal fireball of orange plasma and twisted black metal. The shockwave knocked the Eradicators clean off their feet. Vance was thrown violently across the marble deck, her hand cannon clattering into the empty pool. The flaming wreckage of the multi-trillion-dollar Syndicate flagship crashed into the artificial lake, sending a massive tsunami of boiling water washing over the edges of the pavilion. I didn't move an inch. The boiling water stopped just at the edge of my sunbed. I looked down at Vance. The terrifying, cold-blooded executor was currently lying on her back, covered in soot, her obsidian mask cracked straight down the middle. She was staring at the burning wreckage of her invincible fleet, completely paralyzed by the sheer, overwhelming scale of the violence I had just dropped on her head. I casually tossed the empty brass flare gun onto the deck next to her. "Now," I said, picking up my glass of lemonade. It was warm now, but whatever. "Let's try this negotiation again. And this time, remember whose house you're standing in." There is a fatal flaw in the psychology of billionaires. When a normal person loses a game of chess, they shake hands and reset the board. When a billionaire loses, they try to set the board, the table, and the entire room on fire so nobody else can play. Executor Vance was still gasping for air on the wet marble deck, her violet eye fixed on the burning wreckage of her dreadnought, when a high-frequency alarm began to wail across the entire island. It wasn't the standard digital chime of the Academy. It was a deep, guttural, mechanical siren that vibrated up through the bedrock. The water in the artificial lake didn't just boil this time. It began to drain. Massive whirlpools formed as the structural retaining walls of the island began to actively retract. "The Tartarus Protocol," Vance whispered, her voice cracking. For the first time, the cold-blooded assassin looked genuinely terrified. "The board, they're sinking the island." "Sinking the island?" Fatty Wong shrieked, dropping his gold sunglasses. "I can't swim. I'm top-heavy." "It's a localized tectonic displacement charge," Vance said, struggling to sit up. She wasn't looking at me anymore. She was looking at the ground. If the board of directors loses control of the primary asset, they destroy the asset. There are thermobaric charges drilled into the continental shelf beneath us. In exactly 10 minutes, Aegis Island, Zenith Academy, and everyone on it will be sitting at the bottom of the Mariana Trench. She let out a bitter, hollow laugh. "You beat me, kid. You beat the dreadnought. But you can't beat the ocean. We're all dead." Shen Luo dropped his silver teapot. It shattered on the marble. The former untouchable elites, by Lin, Long Ao Tian, Shen Luo, were completely paralyzed. All their money, their bloodlines, their combat training meant absolutely nothing against a localized extinction event. I stood up from my sunbed, stretching my arms lazily. "You know, Vance, I really hate getting my socks wet." I didn't reach for my data pad. I didn't reach for my smartwatch. I reached into my jacket and pulled out the old-school, analog walkie-talkie. I pressed the button. "Hey, architect. You awake down there?" "I am always awake, Administrator Yi." The digital god's voice crackled through the cheap plastic speaker, the chorus of 1,000 metallic voices compressed into analog static. "The old men in the bunker are trying to flood our basement," I said casually, walking toward the edge of the draining lake. "I just bought this property, and my insurance doesn't cover tectonic displacement."
Can you handle it?
"The Tartarus Protocol is a hardwired, analog system, Administrator. It is disconnected from my primary digital matrix specifically to prevent me from overriding it." "I didn't ask for excuses, architect," I said, my voice dropping its lazy drawl, shifting into the terrifying, absolute authority of the Zenith Spire's true owner. "I asked if you could handle it. You are the greatest predictive neural network in human history. Act like it." There was a 3-second pause. For an AI of that magnitude, 3 seconds was an eternity of processing. "Understood." Rerouting physical assets. The ground beneath our feet violently shuddered, but not from the explosive charges. From the dense jungle surrounding the academy, a deafening mechanical roar echoed. The trees violently parted. Thousands of robotic direwolves, the same titanium beasts I had hacked during the midterm exam, poured out onto the campus. But they weren't acting like guard dogs anymore. Under the direct control of the architect, the wolves began moving with terrifying, synchronized hive-mind precision. They sprinted toward the island's massive structural retaining walls. Their jaws, capable of crushing steel, clamped onto the massive manual override levers of the island's floodgates. What are they doing?" Vance breathed, watching the sea of titanium wolves literally fighting the mechanics of the island. "The Tartarus Protocol is analog," I explained, leaning against a marble pillar, "which means it requires physical gears to turn, physical latches to open, and physical wires to detonate. The board thought isolating it from the network made it safe. They forgot that I own an army of giant metal dogs." Sparks flew into the sky as thousands of robotic wolves sacrificed themselves, shoving their titanium bodies directly into the massive, grinding gears of the tectonic displacement system. The sickening sound of crushing metal echoed across the island as the gears jammed. The draining water in the lake slowed, then stopped completely. The siren died. The Tartarus Protocol had been stalled by sheer, brute force physical sabotage. There is a fatal flaw in the psychology of billionaires. When a normal person loses a game of chess, they shake hands and reset the board. When a billionaire loses, they try to set the board, the table, and the entire room on fire so nobody else can play. Executor Vance was still gasping for air on the wet marble deck, her violet eye fixed on the burning wreckage of her dreadnought, when a high-frequency alarm began to wail across the entire island. It wasn't the standard digital chime of the Academy. It was a deep, guttural, mechanical siren that vibrated up through the bedrock. The water in the artificial lake didn't just boil this time. It began to drain. Massive whirlpools formed as the structural retaining walls of the island began to actively retract. "The Tartarus Protocol," Vance whispered, her voice cracking. For the first time, the cold-blooded assassin looked genuinely terrified. "The board, they're sinking the island." "Sinking the island?" Fatty Wong shrieked, dropping his gold sunglasses. "I can't swim. I'm top-heavy." "It's a localized tectonic displacement charge," Vance said, struggling to sit up. She wasn't looking at me anymore. She was looking at the ground. If the board of directors loses control of the primary asset, they destroy the asset. There are thermobaric charges drilled into the continental shelf beneath us. In exactly 10 minutes, Aegis Island, Zenith Academy, and everyone on it will be sitting at the bottom of the Mariana Trench. She let out a bitter, hollow laugh. "You beat me, kid. You beat the dreadnought. But you can't beat the ocean. We're all dead." Shen Luo dropped his silver teapot. It shattered on the marble. The former untouchable elites, by Lin, Long Ao Tian, Shen Luo, were completely paralyzed. All their money, their bloodlines, their combat training meant absolutely nothing against a localized extinction event. I stood up from my sunbed, stretching my arms lazily. "You know, Vance, I really hate getting my socks wet." I didn't reach for my data pad. I didn't reach for my smartwatch. I reached into my jacket and pulled out the old-school, analog walkie-talkie. I pressed the button. "Hey, architect. You awake down there?" "I am always awake, Administrator Yi." The digital god's voice crackled through the cheap plastic speaker, the chorus of 1,000 metallic voices compressed into analog static. "The old men in the bunker are trying to flood our basement," I said casually, walking toward the edge of the draining lake. "I just bought this property, and my insurance doesn't cover tectonic displacement. Can you handle it?" "The Tartarus Protocol is a hardwired, analog system, Administrator. It is disconnected from my primary digital matrix, specifically to prevent me from overriding it." "I didn't ask for excuses, architect," I said, my voice dropping its lazy drawl, shifting into the terrifying, absolute authority of the Zenith Spire's true owner. "I asked if you could handle it. You are the greatest predictive neural network in human history. Act like it." There was a 3-second pause. For an AI of that magnitude, 3 seconds was an eternity of processing. "Understood." Rerouting physical assets. The ground beneath our feet violently shuddered, but not from the explosive charges. From the dense jungle surrounding the academy, a deafening mechanical roar echoed. The trees violently parted. Thousands of robotic direwolves, the same titanium beasts I had hacked during the midterm exam, poured out onto the campus. But they weren't acting like guard dogs anymore. Under the direct control of the architect, the wolves began moving with terrifying, synchronized hive mind precision. They sprinted toward the island's massive structural retaining walls. Their jaws, capable of crushing steel, clamped onto the massive manual override levers of the island's floodgates. What are they doing?" Vance breathed, watching the sea of titanium wolves literally fighting the mechanics of the island. "The Tartarus Protocol is analog," I explained, leaning against a marble pillar, "which means it requires physical gears to turn, physical latches to open, and physical wires to detonate. The board thought isolating it from the network made it safe. They forgot that I own an army of giant metal dogs." Sparks flew into the sky as thousands of robotic wolves sacrificed themselves, shoving their titanium bodies directly into the massive, grinding gears of the tectonic displacement system. The sickening sound of crushing metal echoed across the island as the gears jammed. The draining water in the lake slowed, then stopped completely. The siren died. The Tartarus Protocol had been stalled by sheer, brute force physical sabotage. "Now," I said, lifting the walkie-talkie again, "let's deal with the pest problem. Architect, where is the board of directors?" "They're located in a level 9 secure underground bunker beneath the mainland financial district, Administrator Yi." "Can you reach their bunker's life support systems?" "Negative. The bunker is entirely analog and off the grid." Classic paranoid billionaires, I smirked.
Fine.
If we can't reach them digitally, we'll reach them financially. Architect, compile the Black Book. Even Vance flinched at those words. The Black Book? How do you know about that? I shorted your stock and bought the company, Vance. I have access to the deep archives, I said coldly. The Black Book. The unencrypted, raw data files detailing every single illegal assassination, corporate espionage mission, and black market arms deal the Zenith Global Syndicate has ever orchestrated. Every bribe paid to a prime minister. Every war funded for profit. I looked up at the sky. Architect, I commanded. Take the Black Book. Broadcast it on every television screen, smartphone, smartwatch, and digital billboard on the planet. Simultaneously. Unblockable. Executing Global Broadcast Administrator. It didn't happen with a loud explosion. It happened in terrifying silence. Across the globe, in Times Square, in Tokyo, in London, every single screen flickered and went black. Then, the raw, undeniable proof of the Syndicate's crimes began to scroll in bright white text. And censored audio recordings of the board of directors ordering assassinations played over the radios in millions of cars. Video footage of Executor Vance's Eradicator squads wiping out rival corporate facilities played on the jumbotrons of sports stadiums. The Zenith Global Syndicate didn't just crash on the stock market. In the span of 60 seconds, it became the most universally hunted terrorist organization on the planet. My walkie-talkie crackled. Global broadcast complete. Warrants for the arrest of the board of directors have been issued by 94 sovereign nations. Interpol and global military coalitions are currently breaching the mainland bunker. I smiled, clipping the walkie-talkie back onto my belt. Well, Vance, I said, looking down at the executor. It looks like your bosses are going to be a little busy fighting off the entire United Nations. You're unemployed. Vance slowly took off her cracked obsidian mask, revealing a pale, exhausted face. She dropped the mask onto the marble. Who the hell are you? She whispered. Me? I picked up my sunglasses and slid them back on, looking out over the quiet, saved island. I'm Ye Chen. Class F, rank 999. And I think it's time for lunch. They say that true power corrupts absolutely. But honestly, I think true power just makes you incredibly lazy. When you can buy a small European country with a tap of your smartwatch, the motivation to wake up before 11 a.m. completely vanishes. It had been 6 months since the Zenith Global Syndicate collapsed under the weight of its own leaked black book. The old board of directors was currently sharing a very cramped, highly secure prison cell in The Hague, trying to figure out how to barter cigarettes without a corporate expense account. And Zenith Academy? It had undergone a bit of a rebranding. I renamed it the Class F Institute of Advanced Opportunism. I was taking a leisurely stroll through the central courtyard, wearing my favorite, slightly faded gray jacket. The strict, oppressive atmosphere of the old academy was gone. Students weren't fighting to the death over merit points anymore. They were trading them. We had turned the entire campus into a fully functioning, unregulated microeconomy. I walked past Lecture Hall 3. Inside, Fatty Wong, wearing a neon pink silk suit today, was standing in front of a massive chalkboard. He was teaching a new core curriculum class, Hostile Takeovers and Tax Evasion 101. The classroom was packed. Remember, people? Wong shouted, slamming a golden pointer against the chalkboard. If the IRS asks, this classroom is a registered religious charity, and my suit is a tax-deductible religious garment. Write that down. This will be on the final. In the front row, frantically taking notes and raising his hand, was Zhao Ming. The former red-haired tyrant of Class B was now Wong's highly enthusiastic, terrified teaching assistant. I chuckled and kept walking. The courtyard itself was pristine, mostly because my new head of campus security was remarkably efficient. Leaning against a marble fountain, wearing a sleek black tactical suit and her signature cracked obsidian mask, was Executor Vance. When the Syndicate fell, she was a fugitive with a very particular set of skills and zero retirement savings. So I hired her. It turns out, when you pay an elite corporate assassin double her previous salary and offer full dental benefits, she becomes surprisingly loyal. Boss, Vance nodded as I walked past. The perimeter is secure. A representative from the World Bank tried to land a helicopter on the South Lawn to serve you a subpoena. Oh, what did you do? I asked, pulling a lollipop from my pocket. I had Bai Lin throw the helicopter into the lake. Vance replied deadpan. I glanced over toward the lake. Sure enough, Bai Lin, still wearing his janitor's jumpsuit, his cybernetic arm now functioning perfectly under my proprietary software, was dusting his hands off, looking extremely satisfied with himself. Good work. Remind me to give you a Christmas bonus, I said, unwrapping the lollipop. I continued my stroll toward the Zenith Spire. The elevator, which the architect had politely fixed and upgraded to play smooth jazz, took me straight to the penthouse. Headmaster Thorne was sitting at a small desk in the hallway outside the main office. He was wearing a beige cardigan instead of his tailored suits, and he was aggressively typing on a standard-issue keyboard. The terrifying, scarred veteran of corporate wars was now my personal secretary. Morning, Thorne, I said, walking past his desk. Any messages? Thorne sighed, a deep, soul-crushing sound. The President of the United States called. They want to know if you are still planning to buy the Federal Reserve. Tell them I'm holding out for a better interest rate, I replied, pushing the heavy mahogany doors open. My office was exactly how Thorne had left it, with one major exception. The priceless Renaissance paintings and antique weapons had been replaced by massive, wall-to-wall flat screens displaying the global markets, satellite feeds, and the internal diagnostics of the architect's subterranean Genesis core. Sitting at the obsidian desk, organizing a stack of digital ledgers, was Su Yan. The once timid girl from Class F was now the chief operating officer of my entire empire. She wore a sharp, custom-tailored blazer, her brown eyes completely devoid of fear. She was currently lecturing Shin Luo, the former student council president, who was standing at attention with a notepad. Shin Luo, these profit projections for the European sector are unacceptable, Su Yan said sharply, tapping a pen against the obsidian desk. Did you even account for the algorithmic shifts the architect implemented yesterday? Go back to the basement and redo the math. And fetch Ye Chen his tea on your way out. Why yes, COO Su. Shin Luo bowed rigidly, his silver ponytail swaying as he practically sprinted out of the office in sheer terror. He's getting better, I noted, walking over and dropping onto the plush leather sofa in the corner of the room. Last week he cried when you asked him to format a spreadsheet. He lacks fundamental administrative resilience. Su Yan smiled warmly at me. But he makes excellent chamomile tea. How was your morning patrol, Ye Chen? Exhausting, I groaned, throwing my arm over my eyes. Walking from the dorms to the spire takes at least 10 minutes. I think I pulled a muscle. Su Yan laughed, a genuine, bright sound that echoed in the massive office. The architect has completed the global Neuralink integration. Your ghost accounts have officially assimilated the remaining assets of the top 50 global conglomerates. You own the infrastructure of the modern world, Ye Chen. There are no enemies left. That's exactly the problem, I sighed. I beat the school. I beat the Syndicate. I beat the global economy. I'm 19 years old, and I have absolutely nothing left to do.
Just then, my smartwatch buzzed.
It wasn't a standard notification. The screen projected a small, highly encrypted blue hologram. It was the architect. Administrator Yi. The AI's voice chimed, completely devoid of its former terrifying echo, now sounding like a polite digital butler. I have detected an anomaly. I swear, if Fatty Wong crashed the crypto market again because he bought a digital yacht, I'm cutting his allowance, I muttered. Negative, Administrator. The anomaly is not terrestrial. I slowly moved my arm off my face. Excuse me? The architect's blue hologram shifted, displaying a deep space radar scan. Millions of miles past the orbit of Mars, a massive, unidentified fleet of hyper-advanced stealth cruisers was decelerating. I have intercepted a transmission originating from the fleet. It appears the Zenith Global Syndicate was not the top of the food chain. They were merely a planetary subsidiary for a much larger, extrasolar corporate conglomerate. And the regional managers are arriving to investigate the sudden bankruptcy of their Earth branch. I stared at the glowing blue hologram. A fleet of alien corporate managers coming to audit my planet. Coming to demand their merit points back. Coming to enforce their rules on my turf. I looked at the hologram. Then I looked at Su Yan. A slow, wicked, terrifyingly excited smirk spread across my face. The absolute boredom that had been plaguing me all morning instantly vanished. Su Yan, I said, sitting up and cracking my knuckles. Tell Thorne to cancel my afternoon nap. Tell Vance to prep the orbital tungsten rod satellites. And tell Fatty, we're going to need a bigger chalkboard. I stood up, sliding my hands into the pockets of my gray jacket, looking out the massive glass window at the sky. It looks like the tutorial is finally over, I smiled. Time to start the main campaign.